Hello guys, welcome back to our eFarm Django tutorial series. In this poultry playlist, today we are taking a deep dive into our Django models, focusing on their incredible new enhancements, especially in the realm of validators. First up, we have our flock movement model. This model helps us to track the movements of our feathered friends. It's all about ensuring that our flock transitions between the housing structures are well documented and validated, so we can trust that our data is in safe hands with these validators in action. Next in line, we have our flock inspection record model, which is one game changer model that records every detail of our flock inspections. It includes the number of deceased birds. We've added the validators to ensure that the accuracy of the records we keep are at par with the daily inspections. And last but not least, we have the flock breed information, which is a model that provides vital insights into our flock's breed, and it shall capture essential information such as the mature weight, the egg production, and even the maturity age. So with these validators, we can be sure that the data that we rely on is rock solid. And if you find this tutorial helpful, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to stay updated with this eFarm Django tutorial series journey. And so, without wasting much more time, let's jump straight into PyCharm editor. Okay, so over here, we have our models ready for us to go through them. So starting with the flock movement model. So since in the previous tutorial I had actually introduced this, I won't really explain more about these fields, but if you have issues, you can as well just comment down, then I'll gladly answer you. So the new update in this tutorial is this refactoring of the validators, just as I have done from the previous tutorial. So we shall have the flock movement validator that shall contain this class, the validate flock movement. So this one shall be able to validate the movements of flock. Like for example, it's illogical to have the choice of, like, let's say a flock is moving from a certain structure, then that same structure is where the flock is being moved to again. I think you understand that rationale over there. So those are the stuff that this flock movement validator shall be containing, the functions that operates on that. So basically, you can see that we've actually applied that in our clean method. So basically, when a flock movement record shall be updated or maybe saved, then it shall be called during the save operation, and then all these validation checks shall be validated. Where you see that the flock movement function actually takes in the three parameters: the flock object itself, the structure where it's being taken to, and also the structure that it's coming from. And then heading to the flock inspection record today, same thing applies. All these other fields remain the same. And then now we've actually added 4 new methods. That is the validate flock availability, validate the number of dead birds, validate daily number of inspection records, as well as also validate inspection record time separation. So if you go through the previous tutorial, you will get that all these were there, but it's only that they were not refactored this way. So all that is also applied during the save operation of the flock inspection record. Now you might be asking yourself, why is it that over here they are inside the clean method, but over here they are not there? So it doesn't really matter. You can as well, as long as the methods are actually called during the save operation, all shall be actually applied. Like you can see over here, in as much as they are under the clean method over here, this same thing just applies as if I've just copied this line and then pasted it here and then commented out the clean method. And then now in our flock breed information, so this is always the model that represents the information about the flock breed that we have in our farm. All the fields remain unchanged. It's only the introduction of the validation check of the flock information, flock breed information validator, sorry. Then it will have just a single method or a single static function, that is the validate fields, that takes all these parameters. That is the chicken type, the average egg production, mature weight in kgs, as well as also the maturity age in weeks. And so during the save of this flock breed information model, or maybe flock breed information record, we just simply call the clean method and then all that is called. So now that it's the validator that is themed in this tutorial, we shall head over to validators.py file. So I'll simply just scroll up. Okay, I think this is a very fast validator for the today's tutorial. So we have the flock movement validator with these static methods. I'll actually just go through just some few methods over here in the interest of time. So starting with this very first method, so we have the validate flock movement that validates the flock movement based on the rearing method in the destination structure. So like you can see over here, first of all, we check that the structure where the flock is coming from should not be the same as the structure where the flock is going to end. If that's actually violated, then it shall raise the destination structure cannot be the same as where the flock is removed from. If the rearing method is a free range, then the housing structure must be within this list. So for now, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense because here is a list, but it's only just a single housing structure type. But maybe in future, we might considering adding some other structure types. So that's the reason why I put it a list. We could have just actually made it if the two structure type is not equal to the housing structure type choices dot pasture housing. So the same thing just applies. So then now if the free range is not actually corresponding with this type of the housing structure, then we shall raise the flocks reared under free range can only be assigned the pasture housing. Hope that makes sense to you. And then now if the rearing method is also a cage system, then the allowed structures are these. So over here you don't see the pasture housing because there's no way you can be having a cage system yet the housing structure type is the pasture housing. Hope that makes sense as well. We also operate on the depleter, where for the depleter we shall be having the open-sided shed. I hope you understand that more so the depleter houses, they always they have some sort of shades on the sides of the wall, as you can see in this image over here. And then we move forward to the rearing method of the band system, where the only allowed structure type choices are these as well. This one almost just is the same as what we have in the cage system. And then now we head over to the flock inspection record validator, where we have these methods. They validate daily number of inspection records, they validate inspection record time separation, as well as also the validate number of dead birds. So starting with this very first one, I'll only go through this one, but if you have issues with understanding this one as well, you can just ask that out. So we are validating the number of inspection records to ensure that there are only 3 per day. So the rationale behind this logic is that even if you are to perform inspection checks in your flocks in the farm, it could be probably 3, like in the morning, in the afternoon, or maybe late in the evening, or maybe at night. So that is what this method actually ensures that is actually satisfied. So what we do first of all, we go ahead and then filter the flock inspection records and then check if they are greater than 3. So what this returns is a query set of the flock inspection record objects. And then now what happens is that since we are passing the date of inspection here as the parameter, so we shall access it, and then now we filter the flock inspection records based on that very date of inspection that is supplied there. And then we check if they're greater than 3, then now we shall raise an error of only 3 inspection records are allowed per day. The next inspection record can be done at that next day. So that one shall be constructed automatically over here. This is now time zone aware, by the way. So you ought to know that the next day over here is a date of maybe the daytime object. So that's the reason why we can access the as time zone over here, and then now we return a time zone aware error message. So that's basically what's happening over here, which is the next day string that we've constructed over here. And then now inside our validate inspection record time separation, we take 2 parameters, that is the flock and also the instance. So we shall be ensuring that after each and every inspection records, there is a minimum of 4 hours difference. So this makes sense because there's no way you can maybe perform an inspection record at 8 a.m., at 9 a.m., or maybe at 10 a.m. So this one also reduces chances of mischievousness and stuff of that kind. So what we will do is that we will go ahead and then check the existing records for that very specific flock, and then by the way we shall exclude the instance of that flock inspection, because if we do so, then probably it will lead to issues because the flock inspection record that is to be saved in this instance will not be saved at that time at the call of this method, that is the validate inspection time separation. So that is basically what we do. We exclude that instance of that flock, and then we also order them by the inspection, and then now we check. So basically what we do over here, we check the time difference as well as also the time threshold that we have, which is the 4 hours that we've actually set here. You can check over here is the time delta 4 hours. And by the way, for the time threshold, it has to be the time delta, maybe the daytime object, in order to actually perform the operations like the subtraction as well as also the addition of the date object. So that's basically what's happening over here. Then if that's actually violated, we shall raise a minimum of 4 hours of separation is required between the inspection records. Then lastly, oh, it's not the very last one, there's another one. So we also have the validate number of dead birds over here, where we shall also ensure that if the instance number of dead birds is more than whatever is in the inventory of that flock, then we shall raise an error, because it makes sense. There's no way the flock inventory shows that you have 10 birds left, then all of a sudden you want to key in a flock inspection record with the 20 birds. It does not make any sense. We shall raise this error if that situation occurs. And then over here you can see we have the validate flock availability. So we shall also ensure that the flock is actually present. So this field, I remember I was talking about it in the previous tutorial. So if you don't really understand how it works, is that this is a field that is in the flock model. So let me just quickly go through it. Okay, so here's the field, and it's not actually being acted on manually. So what happens is that as we actually compound the flock inspection records, let's assume that the flock started with 100 chicken, and then now as you do maybe the first month, you do flock inspection records that actually have the deceased birds to total to maybe 100. By the time that the summation of the flock inspection records the deceased birds total to 100, this one shall actually be turned to false, and now it will make this flock actually not available. So that is basically what is happening over here. And then last but not least, we have the flock breed information validator. So this is quite simple. I don't really think even I need to explain it, but okay, let me just go through it. So we have the check. First of all, if the chicken type is a broiler, the average egg production must be none. Makes sense, because there's no way the broiler chicken can have any records of the average egg production. If the chicken type is not a broiler, then the average egg production must be supplied. So this makes sense, because what this means is that, let's say if the chicken type is a layer or maybe a multipurpose, those chicken actually they lay eggs, so the average egg production must be provided. So the average mature weight in kgs of the chicken must not be less than 1.5 kgs. Hope that makes sense. Then also, if the chicken type is a broiler and the maturity age in weeks is not in between maybe 8 to 10 weeks, does not make any sense. Same applies to all this. And so that's it for the validators that we have for today. So I'll quickly just go ahead and show you the signal. So we only have a single signal, that is the flock movement for this tutorial. So if there is a movement of a flock from one structure to another structure, this update flock current housing structure shall be fired. And if it's fired, it's being fired just by the post save of the flock movement model. So what happens over here is that whenever the flock movement is saved, the signal is emitted, and then now this operation is carried, where we can now get the flock from the instance over here, because the instance that is actually here is the flock movement. And remember the flock movement model over here. Let me just go through it. Flock movement over here, yes, you can see we have the flock field. So basically we can access the flock through this instance. And don't get confused by this. This is just some annotations as I was typing, so this makes the intelligence of my PyCharm editor be much more quicker, but as well this also applies. So we can retrieve that flock, and then now we change its housing structure and then save it. And so that's it for the signals that we have for the today. It's only just a single signal that we introduced today. So I'll quickly head over to the serializers. So in our serializers over here, we have the 3 new serializer. Starting with the flock movement serializer, nothing has actually changed. We shall be able to select the flock, the from structure, as well as also the to structure. And then we also have the flock inspection record serializer over here. So this one as well, there is no any new stuff that is introduced or maybe removed. Same thing applies to the flock breed information serializer. And that's it for the serializers. Now into our permissions.py, similar stuff just applies. So over here, we've actually added about 5 new permissions. That is the can act on flock movement. So this is the permission class that is actually applied in any operation that we only want to restrict that the farm owner as well as also the farm manager are the ones who can actually act on anything to do with the flock movement, just like we are actually defining in this case. So basically, that's what this class shall actually do. You can see over here, we are only allowing the farm owner and also the farm manager. So that's the first permission that we have for the today's tutorial. Then this one is also the can add flock inspection that shall allow all the farm staff, because workers do work in the farm and they're the people who will be performing the inspection, like checking if there are dead birds and stuff of that kind. So you can see all the farm, that is a farm worker, the farm manager, assistant farm manager, I mean the whole farm staff. And then now we head over to other permissions, that is they can add, view, update flock inspection, as well as also they can delete flock inspection. So this one is only restricted to the farm owner as well as also the farm manager. I hope that makes sense for you as well. Then we have the can act on flock breed information. Same thing applies, only the farm owner as well as also the farm manager. So then now with that, we have the permissions already explained. Now we jump into the views.py. So in our views over here, I'll start with the flock movement view set. So basically from the previous tutorial about these models, we had actually left it at this point. It was just this. But now, since we are beefing it up, I'll quickly just go ahead and explain it. All those others just operate on the same principle. So in this case, we shall be activating the filtering as well as also the ordering functionality in this our view set. We shall also be able to filter based on whatever we have actually supplied in our flock movement filter set, that is in the filters.py over here. Then we shall also be able to order based on the movement date as well as also the flock. Then the permission class, the one that I was talking about, the can act on flock movement, that is restricted only for the farm managers as well as also the farm owners, is applied over here. Then now we override this list method over here to ensure that if the request is actually to be processed by this view set, but it has some query parameters, and then this query parameters does not actually filter anything from our database, that is the first case over here, then we shall return the no flock movement records found matching the provided filters of the status 44 not found. But if basically there is no any query parameters, you can see the if block checks first of all if the request has some query parameters, and then in this case means that the request is just a plain request, but there are no any movement records in our database, then we shall actually return the no flock movement records available of the 200 status. But if there are some stuff, we shall serialize them and then return them with the status 200. Okay, the main is equal to true actually informs the parent serializer over here that sometimes whatever is to be returned from the database could be multiple records. So similar thing just applies to the flock inspection record view set, where you can see over here it's only that now we are overriding the permissions based on whatever action is to be performed. Like in this case, if you are to perform deletion of the flock inspection records, then we shall actually now only allow people who are specified in the can delete flock inspection permission class. But if it's not, then we shall allow everyone, the ones that are in the can add, view, update flock inspection record. So for now, temporarily, by the way, I've actually blocked the update as well as also the destroy. I'm still looking for a way in which I can actually handle this logic, because it has some chain of actions. Like for example, if somebody deletes a flock inspection record, what happens to the flock inventory? Because let's say the flock inspection record that is deleted, it was having maybe 10 deceased birds. So you see, if it's deleted and then now, or maybe if it's updated, then the flock inventory had already been actually updated, then we will need to reverse the previous count of the flock inventory. So I'm still looking on a better way of how to handle that logic. So that's the reason why I've actually temporarily disabled the update as well as also the destroy function. And then for the list method, same thing applies. Then for the flock breed information view set, there is nothing much over here. Everything is just as it was. It's only that we are actually adding the permission class, that is the can act on flock breed information. And so that's it for our views. Now we head over to the tests. So inside our base tests folder over here, set the poultry, then tests over here. So in the test views, so we've actually added these new tests, that is the test flock movement view set, test flock inspection view set, and also test flock breed information view set. So since these tests are so many, I'll only touch on one, and then if you have issues or maybe you want to learn about how these tests are actually configured, don't hesitate as well to comment that down. You can see the tests are starting from the line 1610 to line 2692. So that's probably around 1,000 lines of code. So let me just expand this one and then go ahead and explain it. Okay, as you can see, as usual, we have the setup method. So this method is always being executed before each and every other method that we have in our test case over here. So basically our setup method supplies the authenticated and the authorized users in our setup method over here. As you can see, we can access their tokens as well as also the setup flock movement data. So these two methods are actually available in our conf-test.py, which is the file that is containing the fixtures for our test cases. So like you can see, we have our setup flock movement data that is decorated with the @PyTest fixture. So PyTest, the framework that we're using to perform the test for our backend over here, knows very well that any function that is inside the conf test that is marked with the @PyTest fixture, that is actually a fixture that should be used somewhere in a test. So you can see, first of all, because we want to move the flock, we first of all have to have the housing structures. So the housing structures are saved, and that's the reason why, by the way, we have the PyTest mark Django DB. So this actually tests PyTest that this fixture first of all needs access to the database. So we first of all save the housing structures. We also save the flock itself. So basically what we shall be returning is this, the flock movement data, that is the flock that is moving from the housing structure 1 to housing structure 2. So back to our views over here. Yes, now you can see we're testing the add flock movement as a farm owner, where we are sending a post request to this URL, the poultry/flock movements, and maybe /add. So basically that's what the reverse function resolves to, where we have the app name poultry. So if this is new to you in this tutorial, you can just go ahead in our my urls.py over here. You can see we have this app name poultry. So that is what the reverse function is using as the app name, and then now this is now the name of the view. Like in this case, back in our urls.py, so inside our flock movements, like you can see, we have this name, the flock movements. Yeah, so basically that's what's happening over here. And then the request payload is the flock movements data. That is whatever we have in our conf-test.py that I've actually shown you, the dictionary. And then now the authorization header token is now the farm owner, since we are testing the addition of a flock movement as a farm owner. The format is the JSON format, which is always suitable for such operations. Then we assert that the response status code is to a 1 created, as well as also the flock's current housing structure is the same as whatever we've supplied. So you can go ahead and check all there are so many actually. I told you they are getting up to the 2692 lines. So you can just go ahead and play around with them. All those validation checks are actually also configured as well to be called each and every time that we call this test. And so that's it. Now we head over to run the tests. So over here, I'll just cumulatively run all the tests for both the dairy as well as also the poultry. There are 442, so it will take quite some time. So I just fast forward this to completion. Alright, so in about 8 minutes, all the 442 tests have actually passed, marking the end of this tutorial. So if you have any question about whatever we've actually done today, don't hesitate to ask that in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.